You were on the Amtrak train with many members of Congress, all Republicans, House and Senate, going to this retreat at the Greenbrier when the crash occurred. Walk our audience through that experience, and we should also point out Senator Cassidy, before he was a politician, a physician, and as such rendered aid in the immediate aftermath of the crash. Let us know what that was like.
I was taking a nap. All of a sudden, you hear and feel this loud boom. You jolt, you hear it, you look up. People who had been standing are now on the ground, and folks are looking to make sure they're okay. You know you hit something, but it doesn't really register. What could it be? Then someone says we hit a truck, and there's doctors on board. They're checking the folks who had fallen. I'm sitting there thinking, if we hit a truck, that truck doesn't have a doctor, and it did a lot worse than we did. So I start walking to the back of the train, and as you walk along, you start seeing the debris field with trash strewn all over the place. Finally come to a door that's open. There's a Capitol policeman there, but I say, I'm a doc, he lets me go. Walk out and go over to the field, and there's a body there. Two guys, Mike Burgess and Brad Winstrup, are trying to keep the airway open.
They're members of Congress.
Both members of Congress.
Also physicians.
Yep. And Brad was actually an Iraqi surgeon, and Burgess
a field medic, right? Is that right?
Field surgeon. And Burgess, a year ago, there was some bloody incident in the Capitol, and he was also there at the time. So they both had some kind of recent terrible things. Winstrup was with Scalise when Scalise got shot.
Right. We'll get into that in a minute.
So they're trying to keep the airway open. And so I pick up the legs because you want the blood in the feet to go to the heart and the brain. And then I look to my right, and there's just a body there. And Phil Rowe is looking at him. He's a doc from Congress, from Tennessee. And I look at him, and he goes he just points his thumb down. And so you got this guy that's dead, and you know the tragedy. It registers a tragedy, but you realize you still got a guy that's alive. And you start focusing there. Several people tried to revive the fellow who had died, but it just did not work. So there's enough. Now there's enough people. My wife comes up. She's a retired surgeon. She had done trauma in her past, and she gives me a little bit of advice. But we just keep this fellow going. EMTs come.
Was he responsive?
He wasn't responsive until they tried to put an airway in. The first thing you do, ABCs of taking care of somebody like this, you want their airway, you want to take care of their breathing, and then you want their circulation to go. That's CPR, keeping their circulation going. He had a pulse. He was warm, so he wasn't, his heart was still beating, so he was still getting blood out to his arms and legs, but he was unconscious. One of the doctors, Larry Bouchon, his wife's an anesthesiologist, she tried to intubate him. EMT had given her an airway tube, but you couldn't sedate him. When you did that, he woke up, or at least started to struggle. His arms and feet started to move.
Because that's painful.
It is painful. It's a gag reflex. It's painful. And so she did her best. At that time, they brought a board. We moved him to the board and picked him up and started to take him away. It's interesting because we knew he must be bleeding, didn't know where. And I'm so conscious of blood because blood obviously carries all sorts of things. As we're carrying him, I look down at my hand, it's all covered with blood. So he's bleeding somewhere in the back, but I don't know where. We get him in the ambulance, and he takes off.